Hi, everybody. It's Wendy Dickinson with Ascend to Sell.
And it's Jay Cowan, Business Owner Exit Strategies, and it's a great day to be alive.
And it's a great day to discuss your family businesses, relationships, and family succession.
And as I always tend to feel, all business is family business because it always seems to affect both sides, right?
It does. You know, Jay, I don't know if you know this, but PricewaterhouseCoopers, they do a report every 2 years on family businesses. And the most recent statistic on the number of family businesses that planned to sell as opposed to pass on to the next generation is higher than it's ever been before. It's about 52%.
Wow.
Does that surprise you?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, me too. So what do you think are some of the factors that contributed to those kinds of statistics?
Well, certainly when we talk about family businesses, there's, for reasonably good reasons, that the next generation that's coming in to perhaps take over the current generation, they have a different standard in terms of how they get to come in. They're related to you.
Well, and you know, that's actually one of the traps. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, we're back at Coal Mine Coffee at 117 Browns Way Road. Jay is having a delicious looking coffee over here. I had a Cafe Bonbon, which is my favorite. And it's interesting because Coal Mine Coffee is actually a partnership. Trisha and her partner Lori own this business, and I don't know if their kids would consider coming into their business or not. So it's kind of a good place to have our Facebook Live today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So one of the traps is that kids think that they are entitled to come into the business, but I also think that there are some times where we as parents pressure the kids to come into the business, even when the kids probably it's not the right place for them.
Yes, no doubt. As a matter of fact, I see a repeat of this all the time when dealing with family, where either the expectation of the parent is, you will come into the business with me. There's no discussion as to whether or not you should. But it's family business, and you're here to support the family, therefore. And seen a lot of emotional issues that come out as a result of that attitude.
You know, last week we talked about really taking a look at doing a due diligence with a partner if you're going to form a partnership. And I would really encourage my clients or any family business to really do ongoing, maybe yearly self-assessments of themselves as well as the family members, but particularly the team that will be responsible for kind of welcoming whomever is going to take over the business, and be responsible for creating the opportunity for that person, that designated future CEO, to have the learning and experience that they want to have to prepare them for that role.
And, you know, it's always interesting enough as well when owners, who bring their family, their adult children into the business, the attitude is, well, this is my biggest goal, and because I want them to benefit from this business that I've created, and they may be thinking only about their family, which is understandable, but at the same time they don't think about their loyal employees and never consider how they may feel about perhaps being leapfrogged over after doing a really good job. And there's a certain amount of buildup of resentment that can occur.
You know, I actually had a conversation with someone today who this person's spouse is now the owner of a business and does not want the business. And the way this came to them was through that spouse's father. So the father passed away suddenly, the business is left to his child, and the adult child and her spouse aren't interested in the business. So I believe that there's a lot of due diligence that could be done ahead of time.
And as I referred to when we talked last week, there have been times when, again, the death of a business owner who's really had tight control of the reins, who passes relatively suddenly, and the surviving family members that are there have still not been trained and mentored enough to really do the job that's necessary. And they oftentimes feel overwhelmed and sometimes even resentful that they've been left in this predicament.
Yeah, because they're not prepared.
They're not prepared at all.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And you know, I think to move away from or to climb out of the possible pitfall that type of thing represents, you've got to be aware of who those people are, but also who you are, and then really be very clear on what kinds of experiences that person needs to have. What can you, as the existing CEO, owner, founder, what can you do to prepare that next generation to take over the reins?
Well, and it's often the same things, or should be at least the same things that you apply when you're hiring any new employee. There should be some general analysis, if you will, some testing perhaps, to make sure you really are getting the right person in the right seat.
Right.
And then you'll know whether it's a training issue that they may lack, or it could be some hidden emotions that aren't there that normally a typical employee wouldn't have. That's got to be done. And many owners of a company have a really hard time with how they're going to work with that family member, because they're used to telling them perhaps what to do, and now it's a little bit different in many ways. And it really can be a difficult, and most are not emotionally prepared to be able to handle that.
Right.
They're looking for help on how somebody can help that family member without those typical emotional push button things that they apply.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I'd really like to encourage you out there who are advisors, that we totally get that you are reluctant to deal with some of these emotional issues that your family business clients may bring to your table. We want to encourage you to really seek out people who can help that client have those conversations, not only with you, the advisor, but also with the family and within the management structure of that family business. Because you're right, some people are just not suited, and we as family members, when we're in our family system, we adopt certain roles. And if those roles carry over into our businesses, that may not serve the business, and that includes the employees, and it includes the building value within the business. So we want to encourage you as advisors, and if you're an owner founder, to really find the help that you need to have those conversations, and have that conversation sooner rather than later.
Yes, you don't want to have happen what happened to a gentleman that I knew some years ago, who had literally said his exit strategy was his oldest son who was working in the business. And when this gentleman reached the age of 65, that's when he approached his son about his plan, that he said, you know, I want to retire, and what I'd like you to do is keep paying me my weekly salary. I want you to run the business, and then one day it'll be yours. And the son said, whoa, wait a minute, we never talked about this. No, I don't want to be an owner. This is a paycheck for me. I can't be expected to do this. And then 6 months he left to go work somewhere else. And you know, that was obviously an emotionally and unfortunately financially devastating situation for that owner. And that's repeated, you know, unfortunately more often than not.
So in other words, the pitfall there is that the business can't grow fast enough to support everybody necessarily. And if you have people who are there with different intentions, like the son who just wanted to draw the paycheck, and it sounds like the dad who at 65 had decided that's when he could be the one to just draw the paycheck. He wanted to attach the
yoke to the horse and let the horse
pass that on.
Pull that for him while he got, you know, he still got paid.
Yeah. So I would say that in that situation, it would have been helpful not only to have those emotional conversations that we were talking about, or tough family conversations, but also to have somebody involved who specifically talked about exit strategies, and maybe, just maybe, somebody to advise them on how to scale for growth to support that type of role for both of them.
And you know, just work very well, that oftentimes when you start talking to an owner and you try to identify some goals, the financial goal is always what everybody wants to talk about, but it's hard to talk about the non-financial, what I call the emotional, heart, or legacy goals, and drawing that out.
That's so
and
true.
sometimes, more than sometimes, quite frequently, the financial goal may be in conflict with the personal heart goal. They may not be able to resolve those, or one of those is going to have to be precedent. And so being able to understand and recognize that, and then having an option B to say, well, if I can't do it this way because it'll hurt me financially and I can't afford that, then I need to think of something else that'll address that heart goal that I have for that child or whatever, to make that work.
And I think including that quote unquote child in those conversations, because the other piece of it is, it might be that the owner and the quote unquote child, their end games are aligned much more closely than they at first appear. But you have to be willing to wade through the desired outcomes for both people and the potential conflict of that.
And how do you address the typical generational issues that occur when you have boomer and today's millennial, who have a totally different vision of work-life balance and what's going to be required, and who are going to come in and sometimes say, I'm going to tell you how to run this business to work better, and you're like, wait a minute, no, that doesn't work here. And that doesn't have to be with your own child. That can be with any employee that you bring in.
True. And I do believe that by, again, having these conversations, and not having a conversation, let me just say, not having a conversation with the intention of changing someone, but having a conversation actually with the intention to learn more about the other person, and then to see where we align and then where we conflict. And so if the assumption is that we're going to align in every way, well, then we're up against some really unpleasant times. If the assumption is we don't agree on anything, well, I would bet you money that's not true. I mean, it's just, again, a lot of times our brains are designed to really process things very, very quickly and label and put people into boxes. And so by having these conversations, it allows us, even when they're uncomfortable, it allows us to really find what the areas of alignment are and where the disconnects are, but also where the gaps are. I mean, if I have a business and my child is going to take the business over, but we both happen to be very similar in how we work, well, then there are going to be some gaps. We're going to need another person at some point, especially if we intend to scale.
You, as a matter of fact, we talked a lot about alignment just last week. And so that's coming into play again. And I think what the point you're trying to make too is, let's start with what puts us that we believe in common first, and not focus right away on what the differences are.
Exactly.
How you like this or I prefer that, because you may find that those issues may be much smaller than we realize and can be addressed in a much easier way. But getting that idea of, let's first identify where we agree on the really important things, is so important to the process.
Yeah. So I really believe that there's a lot of opportunity there for people to truly be a team with their family members if they're willing to have those difficult and sometimes uncomfortable conversations. So here's another crazy idea for that scenario that Jay and I were just talking about. But what if every family business assigned a mentor from an outside company to that next generation?
That would be truly fantastic, in my opinion.
Could be a great way, right?
Well, and for another reason that I've, again, conversations we have with owners, and having at one time having a partner with a child come into our practice, I often will suggest that let's have that child go work somewhere else first.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's get them not just to build up a,
Well, a work history,
Yes.
but also a set of experiences that are outside of the company.
Exactly. Let's find out if maybe you're thinking the old man is a difficult person to work with. Go work for somewhere else and find out, well, maybe he or she is not as bad as I thought, and they've got a different dynamic.
Yeah.
It also will help in terms of, because this is, again, an unspoken thing, but it does happen. When you have to doing that and you've got that person, that family member, having worked somewhere else, number one, they may decide this is what they truly believe, and you've really avoided a trap for them. But secondly, when they come back, if they do come back, they've got a totally different perspective on things. And those employees who are there watching this person come in, well, they've already proven themselves working at this other company or that other company, not coming here just because. And again, that's often unstated, but it's very much in the mix. So, and they want to be able to do that too. I have that kind of experience working with my stepfather. I'm the one, I had to bend over backwards so much because he wanted to bend over, made it harder on me because he didn't want his employees to think he was just trying to help me, and I didn't want people to think, well, I'm going to be working with them because I've earned, I haven't earned the right. And I want to be able to show that I have earned the right.
By virtue of who your mother's married to.
Exactly. So that's an entire concise issue that's going all the way around, inside and outside.
The other thing I'd like to really point out to those of you who have family businesses is that the things that Jay and I are talking about, they're totally normal. I mean, they happen in every business.
That's right.
Whether it's a family-owned business or not. And I think to the argument that there's another layer of complexity, and you're not expected to be an owner in that. I mean, an expert in that. You're a business owner. That's where your expertise is expected to be.
Yes, and I think that's the reason why we see so many peer groups, advisory groups, and so forth for owners that have been formed, because having been involved with one of those myself for 7 years, I saw that it didn't take long after being with the same group, again, every month. It didn't take long for us to get off the business conversations, but we ended up spending more and more time with those personal conversations. What's going on with even if our family's not in the business, but what's going on? Well, I got some issues at home that are really concerning me, or I've got, I don't know how to develop my child, and I don't know if I should have my child come work here. And so I know that those are absolutely as important as anything. So that's sort of a one-step thing to kind of, where somebody in that group might say, if I can help you there and maybe have conversations with the child, I think that's where it maybe could start. But I absolutely think, even if you think you don't need any help, you really should have someone else there to bounce things off of, as well as that child to bounce things off of.
Yeah.
Somebody who's not going to play sides, but who's there to help.
A neutral third party.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Just like in marriage counseling.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and the other thing I think to mention is that a lot of times business owners feel like they are kind of down in the trenches and they don't have time to get other people involved. But I would say, from what I've seen with the business owners I've worked with, it actually helps them create bandwidth to do more by having those other people involved.
Yeah, it does, because the tendency is, if you're doing it yourself, you're carrying it around with you all day long, every day, and it's really hard to switch.
Yeah,
something's going to suffer. I can't talk to you today, son, because I'm really tied up with this other thing, and now, son, daughter is waiting for days for them to come back around again. So it's really, can't state it enough. It's really very extremely helpful for you and your business to have somebody come in who's outside of that, that doesn't carry any of the baggage.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
It went by so fast, and my coffee's still warm.
Oh, that's great. Well,
This is
So I
awesome.
guess this is time for us to say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us today, and we wish you a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Hope you have a great one.
Bye.
Good plug.